live.
All right, give me the countdown. Thank you. Okay, once again, good evening and welcome to this special meeting of Portland's Economic Development Commission. My name is Mike Nadolski and I chair the commission. I'd now like to ask my fellow commission members to introduce themselves. Do you want to start, Sarah? Yeah.
I'm Sarah Whedon.
Karen Renner.
Angela Hammond.
Robert Petzold.
Great, thank you. Now, can I get one of my colleagues to make a motion to accept the agenda for tonight?
I make a motion.
All those who approve? Excellent. Let's get down to business. Okay, a few opening comments before I turn the floor over to Dan. First of all, we don't see this many people at our Economic Development Commission meetings, so it's nice to see some faces from town. For those of you not familiar with the Economic Development Commission, our mandate is simple. Our job is to help create a positive business environment in town, which includes promoting new business investment consistent with Portland's plan of conservation and development. This is what guides our actions. Among the key priorities in Portland's plan of conservation and development are to strengthen the town center and to support appropriate redevelopment of the Elmcrest property, with the overall goal of creating a vibrant town center where people want to live, shop, dine, and play. Today, I think we can all agree, as was the case in 2016 when the plan was adopted, our town center does not yet have the necessary critical mass of people, business, and activity to truly be considered a vibrant town center. That leads us to the topic of this special meeting. Okay. Again, to be clear, this is an information session. The goal of this session is to help us, all of us, evaluate whether the proposed changes to the Elmcrest, now Brainerd Place project, are consistent with achieving the town's strategic objectives. Now, we all understand that there are, and always have been, a wide variety of viewpoints on this project. And that's okay. Reasonable minds are free to differ. And certainly with a project of this size, it is to be expected. At the same time, it's come to our attention that there are lots of unanswered questions and, quite frankly, some misinformation about the proposed changes for Brainerd Place. So to help answer those questions and to clear up any confusion, we've invited Dan Bertram to present his proposed changes in detail, to explain the rationale behind those proposed changes, and to respond to our questions about the project. This is how the meeting's going to run tonight. In a few seconds, we'll ask Dan to walk through his project, his proposed changes. Then we'll ask Dan to respond to questions from the commission, and then we'll have an opportunity for your questions. Now, this meeting will end no later than 9 p.m. For those who wish to ask questions, there is a sign-up sheet, which I believe now is to my left, your right. For those of you who wish to ask questions, simply put your name, you will be called on, you will have an opportunity to ask your question or make whatever comment you wish. Hoping for a nice civil discourse here. Again, this is an information session, so I'm hoping that we can all be respectful and courteous, and to make sure that everybody here and online can make sure they hear every question and how it's answered. We'll probably be limiting the time on your first question to 3 minutes, three minutes, so that everyone who has a question has an opportunity to ask their question. You can get back in the queue, and if you have a second or third question, that's fine. We'll run through as long as time permits. Okay. Finally, and importantly, please keep in mind, there's no votes today, there's no decisions. In fact, there's no action of any kind that will take place tonight. Tonight, this meeting is simply about fact-finding. So with that, Dan, I will turn the floor over to you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that introduction. This was a great opportunity, I think, to just get it out there and talk about what and why. Am I close enough to the mic? Coming through? Yep.
Yeah, we're just going to move there so we can see the.
Oh, okay, sure. So, like Mike said, the hope is to kind of make this a little more conversational. So I prepared a presentation that is historic, but should be reasonably brief, and we'll keep it to 30,000 feet in terms of the what and the why. So I figured what we would start with was a plan from day one. And if we look in the northeast corner, this is Building E, the apartment building that is under construction now. The foundation for Building F has gone in. This is Brainerd House. But from this original plan, there were necessary changes, because if you look in the southwest corner of the site, the Hart Jarvis House had originally been intended to be moved by a nonprofit and restored in place. And one of the things that was, as we got started with phase one, that was becoming a bit of a pressure point was the fact that there weren't funds being made available for the move of that building or the restoration of it. And so if we go to the next slide, this is the next iteration of the site plan. And the key difference between the last two is the Hart Jarvis House being kept on property in the same site. And what happened there was we reworked the Starbucks building here. It had been horizontal to Marlborough Street. It's now perpendicular. So other than that, the A building, and this shows the summary of commercial allocations and residential unit allocations per building. And out on the corner of Main and Marlborough, which was supposedly a deal that had been in place long before I got here in 2015, was slated a CVS. And so that CVS, if we go to the next slide, looks something like this. And again, this predated me, but we were working with where there was economic building blocks for building the site. Now, at the time, it was across the street from Rite Aid. Now it's across the street from Walgreens, and CVS is no longer interested, and I'm not all shook up about that, frankly, because I'm not sure that this would have been the most beautiful thing on the corner, but this is what was, let's just say, the only commercial leasing that had occurred before we came on the scene. And so they're no longer interested, and we were never that excited, because I don't think this is a very inspiring corner for the site. And if we now go to the next slide, we have I think, a more exciting proposal for what's out on that corner. Now, if we go before and after, there was a large L-shaped building here, 70-some-odd thousand square feet. I would imagine that most of the people who are here tonight probably heard some of the comments that were made by me, and I'd like to not really be negative, because I'm very positive about this project. But I covered some of the things that we had gotten from feedback from commercial real estate brokers, from Atlantic Realty to Sullivan Hayes, and now with CBRE, where the theme of it is that we just don't have big box demand here, and filling the A building in its current form just isn't going to happen. And so what we've tried to do is step back and say, okay, what's the best way to fulfill the vision? As Mike mentioned, the Plan of Conservation and Development speaks very specifically about the redevelopment of the Elmcrest Hospital. And so we do have the Starbucks here going in this part of the site, and that's, everybody can see that building. They submitted for building permits actually this past week, and so we expect an October opening. But we're trying to keep the bar high, because when we look at what the challenges are for commercial leasing, when there isn't large user demand, it's in that 2,500 to 5,000 square foot range where people think that we can really amenitize a town center. And so we have come up with a plan that shifts what was down here in the large building because there was 13,000 square feet in that CVS pad and 1 story, and we've created a building here that we think will do much better for commercial leasing and make it a better amenity for the whole town. So if we go to the next slide on that, this shows essentially in yellow where there is a commercial use in the new plan, be it on the ground floor, ground and second floor. But we tried to preserve the mixed use side of this because that's an important component of the development. So if we go and focus on this corner, and forgive me, I may go back and forth a little bit, but I just want to kind of really highlight the thinking behind the revised B building. We wanted to do something that we felt would meet the demand both on a retail level. So each one of these spaces on this building are 8,000 square feet of retail on the lower level, 8,000 of office above. There's a vestibule elevator lobby here that you go up and then turn left and right to go to the office space on each side. And this is a similarly sized building with 8,000 of retail below and 8,000 above. And so in total, you have 32,000 square feet of commercial contemplated for that space. So if we go to the next slide, this is in contrast to what that CVS picture was a few minutes ago. So as you come over the bridge here, this is what you would see at the beginning of the corner, okay? So we think this is a much more attractive building, and I think sets the tone for coming into the town of Portland in a way that a CVS on the corner never really could. And then if we go to the next slide, this gives you the looks of the building from Main Street along here as you start to come around the corner, right? So this is the Main Street fronted part of the building. This is the Marlborough Street part, and then that is the backside of the elevated lobby. This signage, don't get too distracted by that. That's just a placeholder, of course. If we go to the next slide, we've now come, you got the Portland Ale House right here. You've now come around the corner, and you're seeing how the other side of that building looks. And then on the next slide, from within the site, this is what you would see. And I think that this look and feel of this B building captures that town center vibe much, much more effectively than a CVS ever could. So there are things in the village business design standards for this area of town where they don't want parking in the front. I mean, this addresses a lot of the extra design criteria that are part of the village district, which is just this corner parcel is out on Main and Marlborough. So from the standpoint of high level, we have this that we think can be delivered into the market that we have, which is not a strong commercial leasing market, but we think it's an important thing to have small rentable spaces, right, that can appeal to where we think the demand is. And the overarching theme here, and I think that this is a change in perspective to the development, is we are trying to do premium spaces. We have said no 5 times to a Dollar Tree, right? There's a Dollar General, there's a Family Dollar. You don't need a third dollar store in town. We need premium stuff. And so we've held the line. We've only gotten Starbucks so far. We have a physical therapy office also coming into the F building. But we're trying to basically get permission for the commercial brokers to go out and sell this vision because we think it's so much more compelling and actionable than the prior. Now, in Building A, where we have shifted some of that commercial space out to this building, we've tried to create something that is unique in the area because we are competing with Middletown, we're competing with area towns for certain types of uses. And so what we did here, if we go to the next slide, this is actually, if we see the note here, Brainerd Place 4th floor restaurant view. We tried to say what's unique about this site that could be really, really interesting. And so there isn't, that I'm aware of, any view like this that's available in Middletown looking back the other way. And we think this is something that is a compelling thing to offer the marketplace that the whole town would enjoy. And so what is the enabling mechanism for that? It's building a big building under it that gets you up that high. And so on the 4th floor, if we go to the next slide, this is just starting to slide to I think we hopped 2 slides, but that's the view from the proposed rooftop restaurant. So if you go, this is the middle shot, and then we'll go to the next. Again, Portland Ale House here, and the corner of Marlborough and Main over here. So what is going on here, if I go to the next slide just to show a visualization of it, is this rooftop restaurant that's roughly 8,000 to 9,000 square feet. And there's a lot that goes into that in terms of being able to create assembly up on that floor. And we spent a lot of time designing this to try to come up with an experience that doesn't exist in town and that we think would be a major hook and some buzz, if you will. So that's a portion of the proposal, right, for, again, the commercial piece. So let's go to the next slide. What we were just looking at is this top corner. Now, this is the front face of a revised A, and through here is another 9,000 square feet of commercial space. And so you would have, and off over here on Building F that's already approved and underway is commercial space that is about 10,000 square feet in the lower level of that. So if we go to the next slide, this would be the entrance to the restaurant experience. You'd go in, there's a dedicated elevator that would take you to the top floor, and we conveyed the area for the rooftop restaurant in the darker colored exterior features. And again, the rooftop. So if we go to the next slide, this gives you, again, a look at what I call it an enabling mechanism, which is the housing component of this. And it is 108 more apartments than were originally planned. But we're viewing that as a way to actually be able to deliver the commercial and the mixed-use experience that can be premium. And so there's a parking garage under each one of these apartment buildings that houses, that can shelter 130 cars each. And that approach keeps you from having a site plan with just a sea of asphalt, right? It helps to actually park underneath. If we go to the next slide. Oh, this here, I figured I would give an update on the Starbucks. this is part of the Starbucks submission right here that went in this week. So this site is about 2,500 square feet. It has an outdoor patio for outdoor seating, and the entrance to it's here. This is the queue for the drive-through that exits on this part of the building and then comes out. And so if we go to the next slide, this is the view from the Marlborough Street side. We'll go to the next slide. This is the side view. Again, if you were coming around Main Street and you were looking over, this is what you'd see from the entrance with the patio over in this location. And the next one shows the layout of the store itself. And so here's your public-facing area, the outdoor patio, service area, back of house, restrooms, that kind of thing. So we're excited because it took a long time to get them to come to town. And we were probably told no a dozen times over a number of years because we've been at this for a long time. But we've tried to very steadily make the case. And we're thrilled to have them, again, opening in October. But we think that that's a building block for the next customer. And so on that same building, there's I can just tell you what we're targeting. We're targeting a Jersey Mike's and or a Chipotle. And we'll see what we're able to get into that space. But we are trying to build it and they'll come on this because we're not in a strong enough market to pre-lease, then justify financing, then build. So the residential component of all this is the enabling mechanism. And the premium side of it is I think, a very important piece, both for the housing and for the targeted commercial. And I'm going to throw out a couple other little things just to kind of show the things that we labor over. If we go to the next slide. And this is just, maybe this just reveals my neuroses, but there are 4 lights right now on the frontage of this job. What we're looking at is Main Street comes up this way, turns right, and then this was the main entrance to the project right here. Okay, so this is the signalized intersection on Marlborough, and Brainerd House is shown right here, right? And this is 1, 2, 3, 4 lights that are served by overhead wires to a wooden pole and then a light, right? And so what we're trying to create in a premium experience is as you come around the corner, and there's nothing we can really do out at Main Street for the overhead wires, but as we come around the corner from around here going down, it should be just this campus revealed, right? And not an overhead, not overhead noise. And so these are the kind of details that I personally obsess over. I'll go into the next slide here. We've gone into naming these buildings. We understand that Gildersleeve is a prominent name in the area, and we think that this B building is adequate or appropriately named after that family. The Aragoni, that's our view of the bridge there. Beach is after the tree. So that's where the Starbucks building is. Obviously, Sage, Hart Jarvis, Brainerd, and then anybody who's been following this project over all the years knows what a key person Fred Hassan has been to making it come alive. And so this is a little bit of a tribute to him, Hassan North and South. If you go to the next slide, this gives you a sense for even the signage. Everything is premium. We'll be incorporating brownstone on these podiums. These are wayfinding signs, and I don't want to belabor that. We can go to this last slide here, and probably leave this up for taking questions. So that's the formal presentation, but I hope that we can have a dialogue. So thank you for listening. Thank you.
questions?
Well, we had seen this presentation once before, and we had asked some questions, so I don't think I want to re-ask those questions. Sure. And did you have any? No? You're good too?
Square footage wise, from the plan that you're permitted for now versus your proposed plan for commercial space, what is the difference in commercial square footage?
We went from 113,000 and change to 83, so it's about 30,000 square feet.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just a couple questions, Dan. Maybe the first question is to talk about the commercial market today with respect to what you're seeing from customer interest. And I think speaking for my kids' behalf, a Chipotle would be very nice, but what is the interest that you're seeing now compared to what you may have seen a year ago or 2 years ago when the project developed? I mean, I look just to add some context here. I spent a lot of time in town. I've lived in town for 20 years. There's a lot of open, vacant, underutilized commercial space on Main Street now. The bank building at the corner of Waverly, the beautiful blue Victorian, all the storefronts across from the Buck Foreman building. They're not developed. They haven't been developed. They need a catalyst with people, energy, and excitement to get down there. But that depends upon your program, your development succeeding. So what I'm asking really is, what's the level of interest you're seeing today in the proposal that you're bringing us?
Well, we have, so we have a very short period of time that the brokers have said, hey, we're contemplating this.
Okay,
but it's been massively more positive. And so I am an optimist, so I'm always pushing towards making something happen.
I guess
And
I realize
so
that's an unfair question because you haven't, this is not an approved plan, you haven't had time
Right,
to.
right. No, we
okay.
can't say that we can offer this because what the issue is, if we go into what's approved right now, right, we have the ability to do this historic house, Sage, Hart Jarvis, Brainerd. We have roughly 4,000 square feet, it's about 3,700. Part of it already leased to Starbucks, and then 10,000 square feet in this building, okay? And we have a quarter of it leased so far. The thing that a commercial tenant wants to know is when can they move in? Yeah. And so all we can really say in terms of Class A space that we have to offer is you can go next to Starbucks, and we're trying to get someone to say, well, Portland doesn't fit their metrics. They have these void analyses. I can show you different things where they score the likelihood of a particular retailer coming to the town. And I point out that Starbucks didn't have a particularly high score, but we pestered them until they came to town. And so we're trying to take that same approach to other potential targets. Now, from the standpoint of it being more and more real, right? Mm-hmm. It's one thing, because everybody on the commercial brokerage side of things says, well, hey, if you just knock down all the buildings, right? Yeah. We'll start leasing. Well, okay, we knocked down all the buildings. If you just started building a building, we'll have X, Y, or Z. And it's been a grind. But that's the macro scene that we're up against. So from my perspective, when we are comparing the 113,000 to the 83,000, and some of the criticism is, well, or some of the recent, bat on the ball improvements, things like that, or a remodeled dollar store or an improved convenience store. That's not what we're trying to do here. I don't think that's what anybody here wants us to be trying to do, just to fill space, right? No. So the idea here is when you get into say the top floor of this building right now is being trimmed, and we'll be able to actually show apartments and hard tat tours relatively soon. And so you're talking premium apartments, quartz countertops. I mean, it's very nice stainless steel appliances, nice finishes. And we'll start building this pool. So there are a bunch of things, you know, the construction trailers will be moving out of there in the next few weeks. So this will get kind of fun because you'll see Starbucks fleshing that out, and this whole experience right through here, this phase 1 experience, will be real. And what we want to say is, well, we have a foundation in on F, and we're going to be able to give you a knowable delivery date there. But some people don't want to be in the back of the site, right? And so we're trying to say, what's our best location for this? It's definitely the B building, right, for this address, if you will. So the whole idea is how to maintain the momentum, because we are approved to build this right here. And we will. Regardless of any cooperation or anything else, we'll build out these 3 historic homes to at least finish the exteriors and hopefully find a user for them that would justify fitting up the interiors, right? We are the end user on the Brainerd house, so that'll get fit up all the way, and we're just working through that process now. And so you have this as your building block, and owning 7,500 square feet to work with here and 1,400 square feet to work with here in a knowable schedule. When people looked at the A building as originally approved, they basically said, that'll never get built. If you're in the industry, you'll say, by the time you get one 10,000 square foot user and then another, and you reach a threshold that's justifying the financing for the mobilization, you're losing the first guy because too much time went by. And so the A building as it exists, we just don't see that it's even remotely feasible. And so I didn't want to come back with something that I didn't think honored the entire discussion from the VCI report to today, right? That there are all these people have come out, you care deeply about your town. I care deeply about this project. I got a lot of skin in the game on this. And we're looking to have something that we're proud of. And I do look for opportunities for something different. And here, I think the level of building here for that corner and the rooftop restaurant will be highly differentiating features. And so we're just trying to say, hey, maybe we can get somebody's attention by doing something like this, but this is not a small investment. Yeah. To get that number of people up to a 4th floor, there's, like I say, a dedicated elevator, an extra stairwell. There are ways you have to frame the building that are much more expensive than the rest of the building because of just their assembly code-related things to that. But I think it's worth it because I think we would have something that would really buzz and would be a regional draw. And that's what we're trying to create.
Okay. I'm going to say the B building, or I guess the Gildersleeve building now is,
yes.
I think, without question, a huge improvement over the CVS. It is a beautiful looking building. It's a great welcoming to the to the whole project, and quite frankly, coming off the bridge, it'll make you want to slow down and take a look. So I think that's a good improvement, so compliments to your design team on that.
Sure.
With respect to the timing on the project, the proposal that you're submitting, would that be part of would that be accelerated to be built in?
Yes.
So by the time the 2 under construction residential buildings are building, would you accelerate and have the B building, Gildersleeve, try to be rentable for, I don't know, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months? I don't know what your timeline is on that.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, it would start much sooner. The plan has been from day one to try to have a separation of about 6-7 months between apartment buildings, right? So as you lease up the first 99 units, that marketing program can roll into the opening of units on the next. And so when
Right.
this building starts to function, it'll be essentially 33 units on the top floor, then the next floor will come online, then the bottom floor. And it'll be a similar exercise on F. So what you are trying to program for is with all the same subcontractors and the team that is there who's moving along nicely and building a nice project on E, and it was the same foundation contractor who put in the foundation for F. You want them to kind of roll from building to building.
But I guess my point was Gildersleeve, Aragoni are part or changes.
Gildersleeve and
which
Aragoni-
comes first?
Yes, they'd have to be be together, because that's the only way I could finance it.
Okay.
Because basically, you need to have the momentum of the residential cash flows, right?
Yep.
In order to justify building Gildersleeve on spec.
Okay.
If you just went in and said, I want to build Gildersleeve, they're going to say, what's your pre-leasing? And we'd say nothing, and that's.
We're your customers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that doesn't really go anywhere. If you
Can
say
we
that.
stay at Aragoni for a second?
I'm sorry?
Just on Aragoni for a second, I just want to make sure that, because there's been a lot of discussion on the apartments and the residential.
Sure.
There's no change in your proposal for 70% of the units to be studios or one bedroom.
Right, the unit mix.
As a middle-aged man with aging parents and college-age kids, there isn't a wealth of rental opportunities for those demographics.
Sure.
With a 70% studio and one-bedroom apartments, it seems like that's the target market that you're going for. Is that still part of the
Yeah, it's
proposal?
younger and older, and that's the same unit mix.
Same unit mix?
Yes.
Okay.
And so the same program as in place for the first two buildings would be here, and as it relates to just the economic model, financing these together as a package is clearly the only way to do this on spec, because you have something that gives you enough cash flow to justify starting. And the issue that we are up against, without some change to this final phase, we're coming over the bridge and
A pile of dirt.
we have dirt piles at B and dirt piles at A.
Yep.
And we also will have, I think, a harder time filling Sage and Hart Jarvis, even though they'll look nice from the outside. But to get someone to come into it when they're on the edge of a project that you don't know when it's going to be finished, that doesn't sell well. So the idea here is to try to maintain the momentum of the project, build out in a clockwise fashion that allows us to take this on spec. And in the conversation with the selectmen on the tax agreement side of things, we basically did not ask for tax benefits for these new apartments. The enabling mechanism,
There's, the tax abatements remains as is, there's no additional,
right, it would apply to the commercial component and 11 of the apartments that were always slated for that building, but not 108 others type of thing. So the concept is that there's no changed economics for the town, except for the sooner this gets built, the sooner the cash flows from the development would be realized. Because the tax abatements don't actually ever produce income if no investment gets made.
yeah, of course.
So,
Yep.
chicken
I
and
guess, so one question that's been percolating, I know, in the town is, Dan, is this the last change that you're coming with? I mean, are you far enough along in the program? With
Yeah, I mean-
Starbucks under construction,
Sure.
with I guess Hassan North and South under, is this what we're going to, is this what we're, our best case in your estimation, does this get us a completed project at the high level kind of premium look that you've presented and that we're all expecting?
Yeah, I think the short answer to that, which I would call this would be the program, right? Because we are now in a spot where we say, okay, we designed this whole building, right, the Aragoni building, and we've designed Gildersleeve.
Okay.
So, well, I just didn't want to talk over.
No,
Dan talking.
please, yes, go ahead.
So the short answer is, this is the program. Now, we had a Starbucks for a while, even when it was going this way, and they came back and they had their requirements, and we tweaked things, and we had to put the dumpster in one place and all that. So as you get commercial tenants, right, There'll be tweaks, but thematically, this is the vision because we're saying we'll create the structures and then it's fitting up inside. So there might be some stuff here and there
No,
on the outside.
working with your customers to make Starbucks a reality, tweaks
Yeah.
here, tweaks here, completely support that, agree with
Right.
it, let the, be business friendly. What I'm more concerned about is, building B Gildersleeve, kudos, beautiful, well done, great, great. But I don't want to be in a position where, okay, that's now half commercial, half residential, we're coming back for
Yeah.
a change.
I think that's fair because we will structure the financing
Yeah.
for these two to be done together. They'll have the benefits that they have, which is 11 units of residential, all the commercial, and you'll green light building a white box essentially. So this is going to be.
I think you're underselling yourself. It's much better than a white box.
What's that?
It's a nice looking building.
Well,
Don't
no,
undersell
no,
yourself, yeah.
I'm sorry, that's a commercial leasing term.
Okay.
So it's like how much of the inside you fit up, so that it can be finished by the
Right,
user.
I get you, I'm kidding.
But yes, but the outside will be great, right, like as we're showing. So yeah, the idea is that this would be the program. We can, there's no reason to look at this more fundamentally,
Yeah.
because we're many years into this, we're actively building.
Right.
And the whole exercise is to keep building and finish the job in the market we're in. And so financing costs have gone up 3 times, right? They're very
Everything's
few
gone up 3
jobs.
times.
I mean, it's actually pretty crazy what the headwinds are for larger jobs. Even though you still see some, the credit markets are not in particularly healthy shape. So you're dealing with those realities and trying to finish a job, which I think is the most catalytic thing to do. And when we look at, say, the Nordic Spa coming into town, and they say, well, what other investments going on? And they see a big, large-scale job going down here. It's a nice box to check that there's a comfort level. Somebody else is investing in the town, and it seems like have moved very quickly, and I'm excited about it. And that's sort of the hope, is that this project can be finished. It's not one bullet in the gun. It's catalytic for the entire town.
Catalytic,
right?
that's the exact right word. I mean, we think we're committed to a vibrant downtown. This needs to be that, but it also needs to be, supported by the town. So I think with those comments, I'm going to stop here and ask Dan to call up our first question. I think Dan's conversational, so I don't know, do we have a bunch of questions? Or
We don't have as many as I anticipated, but
Okay, so feel free to ask
for
your
the first round, we will keep it to 3 minutes for a question or statement, and then we can cycle back through if people have more questions. I still do have sign-up sheets, so if you do want to ask for a second round of questions, please just sign up, or at the end we might be able to be a little more easy. I am gonna time you, so after you say your name and your address, and that's how I'll call you up. Just I'll start the clock. I'll give you a 30-second warning, but please don't feel like I'm trying to cut you off. You're welcome to try to come back again if you'd like to.
Okay, thanks,
So,
Dan. Thanks, Dan.
To start off, it's Darlene Rice.
Can you give me an idea?
Oh, sorry, I missed one thing. Probably since we have people watching on YouTube and stuff, if you could just come up to the podium and speak from the podium, because we just need you to be mic'd up. Sorry about that, folks.
Actually, we have an extra mic here, right? So we can.
My question actually is, I love this, I do. I'm all for change, and you'll know why in a little bit. But my question is, what are the actual prices of these rentals? What is it gonna cost somebody to move here?
For the first building going up?
That first building?
Yeah.
The first building.
Residential
Yes.
or
Okay.
commercial?
Yes.
Residential or commercial or both?
For the residential.
Residential,
That's what
okay.
I'd like to know, what's gonna cost somebody to come live here.
We have not released that yet, but I can pull up something.
Yeah, Dan,
Actually,
just,
let me-
I'll
let me-
set up this other mic right here. If you guys could just share the podium
If
for a moment.
you have other questions,
I do not, that's my only
Yeah,
question.
no,
I'd
no.
like to say something else later if I can.
Sure.
And then I'd like to ask, at one point, I remember Mary telling us there was some type of website or list that was being established of potential residents. Has that list continued, and do you have a current list of people that are going to move into building F, say first design?
So, okay, here we go. So typically, people don't plan to move into an apartment a year in advance, right? And so what you basically do is create a VIP list, right, of folks who are interested. And that's what we've administered thus far. We have not begun leasing because we haven't released pricing. We also don't have an opening date. And so we're working through the logistics. Right now, we'll have units that are finished for late summer, but we have switchgear to turn power onto the building that's not slated to come until the fall, which is trying to be addressed by construction people to make that not the reality. Until that's answered, we won't start a leasing process because it just gets pressurized. People plan to move in and then they can't, and then it's very disruptive. So we've opened too many buildings to do that. So when we think we're counting down to 3 months of high certainty of opening, that leasing process will start.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Darlene, was your question answered in there?
No, I haven't given the lead.
Okay,
I'm looking,
okay.
I want to look at a model before because I did tell Ryan that I would say something by the end of April. And then I wasn't sure if they were going to get the switchgear for the building to open it. But I'll give you a range of rents. I mean, what I have said in the past is if you look at Knollcrest and the Tannery, which are other apartment complexes in the region, you'll have rents that are somewhat in line with that. And so, but I'll give you an objective dollar a starting rent for a studio 1 and a 2 in a couple minutes. Okay.
Okay, so we'll
Follow up.
yeah, we'll follow up with that. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
just don't want to say the wrong thing.
Okay, yeah, no worries, no worries.
Don't rush to
Okay,
get it.
so,
You can always follow back with-
Sure.
Okay, so for the second question, Terry Grady.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold off to being, thanks.
Okay, no problem, Terry. Okay, next on the list is, and I'm sorry if I'm not saying your last name correctly, Lois, sorry, I'm sorry, Lois. Vinciletti, sorry.
Hi, I'm Lois Vincilette. I live on Joel Drive. I've been here for 20 years. I've owned my house for 19. I love this town, very invested in this town. I did want to ask Mr. Bertram, did you say that okay, we're going to have the original residential apartments and also the added ones are going to be in this new proposal?
Yes, this is inclusive of everything.
Okay.
This is the full
Okay,
proposal.
what I don't want for our town is just people. I mean, you don't know if these businesses are gonna thrive or if they're not. And what I don't want in this town personally is just a cluster of people. I mean, we don't want just people here, right? You're gonna have these apartments, and what about the businesses? That's my thing on this. I don't want just more people in our town. We do need business. We do need business. Of course, that's not you can't say, yeah, these businesses are gonna thrive because you don't even know. That's all. I just don't want more people added to our town, clogging our town, clogging our roads, which are already pretty damn clogged right now, to tell you the truth. But that's all. Part of my question was answered.
Sure.
I wanted to know what the price was going to be on these apartments,
Sure.
starting if you had some kind of that's what my
Yeah.
question was going to be too.
So a studio.
Thank you.
No, absolutely, and I'll probably go back
I'm
to a
sorry,
slide.
Just to be clear, to follow up the question, there are signs around town that say no 350. It's not, you're not adding 350 new apartments.
No, it's
You're adding 100 new apartments.
Yeah, the proposal's for 108 additional apartments from what's approved now.
And 70% of those are studio 1 bedrooms.
maybe explain to us a typical person, of a professional person who lives in these apartments, if they have to work in Hartford, let's say, how would their commute be out of Brainerd Place? Would they be able to go out a back way to get onto the bridge, or do they all have to stop at the light? I mean, how much traffic do we think is really going to go at that stoplight that's
Sure.
right there on Route 66?
So we have the proposal that was analyzed, before and after, right, in terms of the existing approval to the proposal with these new apartments, right? And the commercial having different characteristics, because there are a couple things that influence one way or the other. The residential has different times that they go in and out, right, typically than the commercial. And restaurants have different concentrations and hours also from the normal retail or office. So what you like is a mix of things, right? So this is well distributed. It doesn't require any new going back to the state, right? Our traffic engineer has reviewed that, and he will be at the zoning presentation, but he also presented an analysis showing the before and after. So you don't have an impact. You have a signalized intersection here, right, out at Marlboro. This coming into the site is only if you're going in this direction, you can turn right, right? So if you come over the bridge, you'll be able to turn right into the project. You won't be able to, going in this direction, turn left, okay? So let's see if I can, there we go. So if you're, I'll go to this mic, sorry. So if you come down the road here on Main, you would take a left onto Marlboro, hit the signalized intersection, and come into the site. So we don't have a before and after negative impact that a traffic engineer would say is material.
So are there only two? Is that, you're saying that there's one off of Main Street over here to the left? So they don't have to go onto 66 at all?
I'm saying that if you're coming into the site, you can turn right at this location, right
Okay.
past the gas station there.
Okay,
There's
you
a,
can't go out that way.
yeah, you can come in, but you can't go out,
Okay.
right?
And
And
then
that
the
was the state traffic
Then
commission.
the next one is up on 66.
Yeah, that's pretty much,
And then is there anything over there
There
to
we
the
go.
right?
this is your in and out, right? Because it's a signalized intersection. Over on Perry is emergency only, over on the east side there. So that is not, there's not traffic in and out of the site from there. And so, and the whole reason is you just create this controlled intersection and it flows. I mean, that's the reason for the signal. And so you can handle what comes.
Why is that only emergency?
It's basically so that you don't have traffic along Perry, right? So that's a small residential road.
Okay.
And then when you're trying to get out of Marlboro, turning left there, it's better to do that out of a signalized controlled access point. Right there, yep. So I can throw out what I believe the starting prices will be on the apartments. So on a studio, we're looking at around $1,600. On a one bedroom, it'd be around $1,900, and then on a two bedroom, it would be around $2,400. So give or take, that's the range that you'd be looking at.
Because what I think I heard, the woman who came up last, I'm sorry I didn't get her name, was that she's worried about congestion in the town. And to me, the current congestion I always see is in that area on 66, especially in the mornings when people are
Sure.
going to work. So
Well-
that's why I was just following through with.
Oh, I think it's a fair question, and it's also, frankly, like this was put together, and one of the reasons that this metric is here is this was put together to facilitate commercial leasing, right? And
What
so
is that metric? I don't know what that
that
means.
is 28.8 thousand trips a day going up and down the road. And then it's around 22,000. So it's the number of cars going by.
Very good.
And so if you say, please come to Portland, there are 9,000 people there, the retailer says, no, thank you. If you say, well, a lot of people are coming through, and if we can get them to stop, then, you know, then that's your beginning of the conversation with someone.
Okay, moving on.
Oh, actually, Dan, if I could, if we could go back to that one slide that had the yellow on it, right? Because the idea, it's back pretty early in the presentation, but it was to show where commercial spaces are that are woven in, so that when you're looking around the site from within it, this is just to the comment about not wanting purely residential, not just more people. So where the point here is that you have 2 stories of commercial here and here, 2 stories here in the Sage House, 1 story with Starbucks and Neighbor, 2 stories of office on Hart Jarvis, a ground level 9,000 square foot, you know, along this front face, because you don't want to come in the main entrance and be looking at a residential experience, and then a rooftop experience here of another 9,000 square feet. Then over on this side, about 10,000 over on building F. My pointer is sometimes showing and sometimes not, so forgive me on that. But yeah, building F has 10,000 square feet of commercial. And like I say, the first tenant that we have lined up for that is a physical therapy office for about 2,500 square feet. So, you know, it's not purely housing, but we want it to be something that is heavily amenitized, and you know, we want the office component, because there is a healthy office component in the top of the B building and the Hart Jarvis. We want to give those folks some access to the other amenities that the residential people enjoy. So it is a mixed-use development by any definition.
Okay, moving on. Grayson Bud Harrison? Hartson? I'm sorry. I'm really bad at these last names. Sorry about that, sir.
My name's Bud Hartson, and I've lived in Portland for 19 years. I have a concern about the traffic that they're talking about. I was at a town meeting a while ago where it was proposed for propane business to come here with their big trucks going across the Portland Bridge. And at that time, we were told that the traffic going across the Portland Bridge was on the average in a 24-hour span about 60,000 people crossing both ways across the bridge in that 24-hour period. I'm all for the new amendment there, not for the additional 108 apartments. But my concern is that with that new entrance right there, coming across the bridge, going in, the way traffic is right now, there's an accident in front of the golf station, Dunkin' Donuts, all the time. Sean Manning here could testify how many times that there's accidents there. With that light going on there, when you make the right-hand turn going out on Marlboro Street, that light stops. If it isn't for a minute, the traffic is going to back up all the way to the bridge. And if there's an accident because of that, it's going to back all the way across to Middletown. We know that. So that's something that I feel needs to be addressed and given a lot of thought to.
Sure. So a couple things. This entrance here out on Main is existing in the old plan and the new. There's no change in that regard. And the traffic engineer for the project is a man named Joe Balskis. He's actually a Portland town resident, and he's a prominent traffic engineer throughout the state, works on jobs for us in other locations and many other developers. He will, at the zoning meeting, give an analysis of this in terms of impact, the before and after. Yeah, if the other thing was built out, it would have the same traffic impact on the town. We're just trying to actually get the job completed. So the arguments of the residential is the enabling mechanism to be able to do the commercial, and that's our fundamental position on the thing. But the before and after, we can do a technical analysis, and that has been done, and we'll be presenting some of that at the zoning meeting, if you'd like to listen.
Okay, moving on, one I should get, June Martin. Oh, I'm sorry if I miscommunicated that to you. Okay. All right, next question is from Stephanie Tatro.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Tatro. I live on Great Hill Road. We have lived in Portland for 24 years. Can we go back to the one that had the yellow highlights on it, please?
Sure.
So in the Gildersleeve building on the corner, the first floor is retail, the second floor is office in both places, yes? If there was the desire by another business to come into Portland and those spaces were already spoken for, how challenging would it be to redesign in the Aragoni building the space under the restaurant? Because as I understand it right now, some of those floors are residential. Could you...
And Copper Beach put together. These are big numbers. We're going to have a lot of changes in our town. But back to, we need this to work. He's down the road, we need it to work. You mentioned the rooftop restaurant. Do you have a tenant?
Are we selectively answering in real time and not in others? Because I would start with your first question.
Sure, go.
I don't know, but again.
No, I'm happy to. I'm happy to cover
however
anything.
you want to do it, I'm just trying to.
Just getting this over with, and I'll ask
Sure.
questions.
Well, I'm going to have to, again, you've got another minute of questions or so let Dan respond to the first two, maybe ask one or two more, let him respond, and then we can cycle back through.
Let's start with those.
Okay. So no one's saying anything about whether or not there are 240 units approved to be developed, and we're clearly developing. The 348 is the proposed number of apartments, and the presentation earlier this evening was to show that that's the enabling mechanism to deliver commercial, because the demand isn't there for commercial. The obligations that we took on that are larger than day one, that you never talk about, include the Hart Jarvis House. And so the Hart Jarvis House was not supposed to be financially our obligation, but we have taken it on. So when you talk about what piece of the job is covering what type of extraordinary expense, this has been a job where we've tried to synthesize many stakeholders' perspectives. And one thing that was very, very clear to me from day one was that the historic side of things was very important. Cost be damned, okay? So a lot of the import of the tax agreements has gone into creating new life for the historic homes. Now, what's the flip side of that? It's a massive differentiator. If we can survive the process to getting to a leasing scenario and turning this engine on, then the Brainerd House, which I've always been a fan of, will be a massive differentiator from any regional apartment complex. Now, how much Sage and Hart Jarvis add to that? We'll stay on it until they are actually making it interesting, but it won't be economically motivated. You have to look at it as art at some point, okay? So when you're talking about this calculus of what are the number of apartments, you're missing what it takes to actually deliver a full experience. And so the densification, and you can quote me on that term and probably beat me over the head with it, is a necessary component of making this actually feasible. And so when you take the cost of new construction for commercial and you say, what are the rents that then need to be paid in order to have that not have negative cash flow, it's a daunting task. That's why we have to make it smaller. We have to put more people with high incomes into these luxury apartments, and that's the plan. So the more of them, the better for the commercial development. I think that's an extremely important concept to drive home.
Okay.
Restaurant tenant?
Just, you got about 40, so
Okay.
maybe one more question and then we'll.
We do not have a restaurant tenant for that space. We like the use very, very much and are confident we will get a restaurant tenant for that space.
Okay, so now I'll talk quicker. So if a restaurant is viable and it works, there's absolutely no reason we couldn't put it on the top of F. You just told the other lady that came up that you're not to that point yet. Changes could be made. So if a restaurant is that great, let's reduce some of the apartments on F. Maybe you get them back on the original A. But back to not moving the Hart Jarvis, and I'm not sure if Elwin outmaneuvered everybody and got that worded in the approval. But regardless, you had to pay for a new foundation. You had to pay to move it. You had to supply land for that building, and you never got any rent off it. So if we're going to disclose full disclosure, now you don't have to move it. You don't have to give up the land to put it on, and you get the rent in the future. So it's not all negative. I understand
Well,
you
no,
throw
we,
it
ne
out there.
we never had to move it.
That's not what the original approval said.
Well, you can go back to the record. The point is, we never had to move it. It was not gonna get moved, and it would have been, I think, a disastrous verdict to say it must go away. And so it's better to try to accommodate the town and its desire for these 3 buildings, because these were identified. There were 6 buildings identified by the National Historic Registry and 3 that survived the VCI report. And so it was an election on our part to say, what creatively can we do to accommodate Hart Jarvis, because the nonprofit charged with doing something with it did not perform.
I'll agree with the last statement. It did not perform.
Ben, you'll just.
Sure.
So we only have 2 more people if we get to the point.
I'll be back up.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't even get past my vote.
Okay, next on the list is Dan Castelli.
Dan Castelli, 566 Penfield Hill Road, Portland, Connecticut. And I got you all beat. I've been living in this town for 71 years. Of course, I don't remember the first 5 or 6, but I'm concerned that the state of Connecticut is facing a housing crisis. And whether it's through mandate or state law, I'm not quite sure, every town has to set aside a certain amount of apartments for modern income families. You have consistently this evening said premium apartments, premium apartments. Our daughter lives in Boston, and what she's paying for rent for her apartment outside of Boston is what you are charging for Portland, Connecticut. And believe me, Boston offers a lot more than Portland, Connecticut does. Are there any plans for some of these apartments to be positioned for moderate income families? And I think Mr. Curley would probably know if we're in compliance or not with the state of Connecticut for moderate income or not. I know it's a funny thing, but this is a crisis. We hear it at least once a week, someone talks about it. Is any of this positioned for moderate income families?
It is not, and I can tell you why, if you like. Essentially, we're balancing other town priorities, and the historic restoration is one thing, the commercial development is another. And so, and we do affordable housing in our development pipeline, and it's often a a day one objective that trumps others. In Portland, when we came to town, there were many objectives that were higher than that. I will say that the idea that $1,600 on a studio and 19 and change on the one bedroom, those are still accessible level rents to, and I would call workforce housing. It's just that they're small. They're highly and well detailed, but we do think that it's not an objective number. It's not $2,000, $3,000 for that same small space. And therefore, it is workforce housing at the same time as being well finished.
Could you define for me workforce? What is
It would
that?
typically tie to an area median income level at around 80%. Up here, I would say I'm more familiar with some of the Fairfield County metrics because those are jobs where that was the day one objective. I would guess it's around $80,000, the state number. The affordable housing law takes the lower of either the state or the local area median income and ties it to, there are certain metrics for that type of housing. But I agree with you that we are massively underserved on housing, and I'm a big believer in this, and I'm addressing it other places in the state. It's just that this project didn't manifest because of other objectives that the town set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan?
Okay, next we have Anita D'Annunzio.
Hi, Anita D'Annunzio. I've only lived in town 9 years, but love this town. And really happy to be here tonight, and you've dispelled some myths, you've made things more clear. So it's been a very informative meeting, and I think that we were able to have that. We've heard a lot about congestion and concerns about, just having more people. And of course, that relates to where we're getting our taxes from, because if it's all rental and we don't get enough commercial leasing going on, it's a big burden to the town to just have that many more people in our schools. And we need them to shop here to boost that economy. My question is, of the, getting back to the marketplace for commercial development, of the leasing opportunities that you see as potentially happening in these smaller to moderate, maybe even Starbucks, is there incentives that are being given for them to move in and then those incentives go away and they leave? Are there leasing incentives being given that we should be concerned about for those leasing opportunities?
So certainly from our perspective, there's a strategic part of the process, right? Which is what commercial tenant is really, really desired to kind of jazz things up, right? And so I have partners on the deal. I would have given Starbucks the space, personally. They have done 5 or 6 Starbucks with over the last little bit, and so they didn't want to give it away. But they did keep them focused, and they made a deal. And so there are a number of ways that a commercial lease gets negotiated in that initial term, the renewals, the amount of tenant improvements that you're covering up front. So there are 1,000 mechanisms to make a deal. So I would say that, yes, Family Dollar comes knocking and I say, no, thank you. There are no incentives thrown there because it doesn't add to the experience. But would we be creative on the rooftop restaurant tenant if we thought that it was going to create something really wow? Definitely. And so I think it's going to be there's an art to this. And so we look at the historic buildings as probably where the most creativity needs to come into play. And that kind of goes without saying, I suppose. I did want to mention one thing when you mentioned the residential piece and the commercial income that comes from it and the exposure on school kids. And so at this unit mix, we've extended out what we've seen in other projects, and we project around 23, 24 kids across the 348 apartments. And so if you take the projected taxation off of that, this is very accretive on the apartment complex alone, and the proposed apartments on the A building would perform from year one, right, as opposed to the 7-year abatement and the phase-in. So there's very substantial revenue coming into the town, and it's not a project that's designed for families. It's actually, you're really just trying to get folks younger and older, but not in between with the families. And they don't have a lot of kids that will go to the schools, and that we think because we're not programming the amenities that way, right? So you get where you make it nice for them. Thank you.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Speaking of children, are there any accommodations on the whole Brainerd site for any green space, dog park, anything like that? And are pets allowed in the apartments?
Pets are definitely allowed. That's a very important feature. You have, if I go through the amenity program, there we go. So we've got a leasing center here and a service area to this courtyard, right? This is an open, this is above the parking garage, but every one of these buildings has this open plaza, right? Here, here, and here. And so.
What are the dimensions of those, Dan, just so roughly, ballpark?
They're huge. I don't want to guess, but they're at least, they're at least 100 by 100. I mean, okay. They're large spaces. And the whole idea is you want to have privacy when you're on a deck that's outward facing, and it can't feel too close. The parking garage dimensions are from this corner down over to this corner and back up. So you have a very large space underground that, again, is hard to see without going onto the site and into the property. But it's why these things take so long to build. So this outdoor space is significant. I think I said in one of some other presentation, I got a call from somebody at DeMarco Constructors because there were like 45 benches or something, like around the whole site. And so you have all these walking paths, and these, there are these little areas here that are kind of carved out to make this very pedestrian friendly throughout. And a gazebo in the front. This is a park-like setting in front of the Brainerd house. So the entire Brainerd house at this point is slated for common area amenities, and that's co-working spaces, that's game rooms, that's types of hanging out space. But that's over 5,000 square feet. We very well may take some of the commercial and do. Actually, somebody asked the question about, would you make a deal? We'd make a deal with a gym. We'd make a deal with a dog wash. Things that can be amenities for the people, both for the town and for the residents. And so there are some things there where we would get creative. And I expect you'll see some of that in some of the spaces. We're contemplating some of that without getting ahead of what people are willing to talk about publicly. You'd see some amenity space there that is town and resident serving.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay, next question is Chris Graham.
Chris Graham, Fox Run Road, 23 years, I believe, something like that. Hi, Dan. I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So you obviously are not new to this business. You have other projects going on right now. throughout the state. What are you seeing in terms of commercial property? Like, are you leasing them, or are they staying vacant?
So my partner on this project, the DeMarco Group, has deeper commercial experience than I do, and they're all around the East Coast, and so they'd give a deeper answer to this. I have a property in Danbury that I'm converting a hotel into apartments, and there's about 30,000 square feet that we're making a gift to a local hackerspace that I'm on the board of, and it's a live-work experience, and it's a social-minded type of thing. It'll also have a restaurant in it, and it's at a location that we think that the restaurant will pay, and the other thing is just a contribution, if you will. Other projects, we've created some co-working space that we're just running ourselves. It's sort of an additional amenity that's available to outside people in the area and residents. But that's other stuff in Connecticut that's going on right now in our portfolio. As it relates to broader trends, my partner would talk about how important the pedestrian part of attracting commercial tenants is, and that's the apartments to help make the case. They're in Monroe County. They're headquartered out there, out of Rochester, and the joke there is basically that stopped growing 30 years ago. And so they have a lot of experience figuring out what the actual commercial requirements are in areas that don't have a lot of demand. And they were a good partner on this because of the commercial component, and they kind of knew how to muscle it along. And so without John DeMarco, we wouldn't have gotten Starbucks. He basically leveraged relationships in other locations and got them to come along. And I'm hoping we're able to do more of that with the rest of it, but with the rest of the leasing process.
Okay.
Sorry for that being too long, but I just want to give you a description of what we're...
So what happens when those commercial spaces here, you don't fill them? Where are we going to be in 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think that the idea here is that we're trying to create space where the marginal investment to get the tenant is rather small, so the extra dollars that go in is tolerable. Right now, it's build the whole building, right? And if we have to pre-lease a big chunk of it and we don't have the demand, then we don't get out of the gates. I think what you have here is an opportunity by saying the project gets to continue all the way through. Then we take that risk, and then at some point, and I will say that I have very substantial partners on this, so at some point we'll fill the space, not with things that don't, not with Dollar Trees. But my point is this: if we put the building up, we will find a way to lease it.
Okay. I have more time.
It just may not make money. I mean, that's the reality.
My last question, I guess, and I'm not sure you can even answer this or if it's something for Ryan. 108 new residential units. Has anyone done a study on how that's going to affect our police department and fire department? Do we know the answer to that?
We've certainly.
I think the additional whatever it is before that, what's going up now, is already going to tax everything.
Well, no, I think that if I may, actually, because this is actually something that we spend a lot of time on in terms of how much tech is in the building, if you will. So with the demographic that goes into these buildings and the access control systems and the cameras and all the things that go on around the perimeter of it, we we're not taxing to a local police authority. Certainly, they look at projects, fire and life safety folks look at all of the elevators in the building and how they can get in and access the population, for sure. That's all. You got a lot of boxes to check there, but those are known code-driven things. But we haven't seen that this type of housing is a particular burden. There are people there, but there's so much that goes into designing this stuff up front that they function well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, moving along. We have about 25 minutes or so. 3 question people signed up, so I think we should be able to move through stuff. I just wanted to give everybody a time frame. If you did want to ask a question, please sign up. We might have time for another 1 or 2 people before 9 o'clock. But next person is Stephanie Tatro for round 2.
I did a little looking up in math. The 2021 average median income for Middlesex County in the state of Connecticut was $90,833. So a studio apartment at $1,600 a month would be roughly 21% of a person's income. A 1-bedroom would be roughly 25%, and a 2-bedroom would be roughly 32%. And I think the industry standard asks that your cost of living be less than a third. So I think that the rents on these apartments would fall within that range. That was not my question, but I wanted to provide that information. My question is, I too am very concerned about the traffic pattern and the number of accidents, the sharpness of the corner that's been implemented, the placement of the traffic light. But Perry Avenue is a dead-end street, but not very far from that is Wolcott Street. Has there ever been consideration for acquisition of that bit of land between Perry Avenue and Wolcott to create a back door on this property?
No.
Why not?
Well, it was 14 parcels in the first place. But really it comes down to the traffic engineer could tell you how these things function better than I can. Mm-hmm. I can just say that when you add a signal, there's so much that goes into that modeling, and this is the safest way to come in and out of this property, by and large.
I think the town should give consideration. I'm not looking to add more traffic to Perry Avenue because there's a limited number of houses on that street, but if you could make at the backside of South Hassan, you could make an exit onto Wolcott, and then Wolcott then takes you out by, I'm looking at a map. I think it takes you out like to the roads that come up around both sides of the bridge. So you could either go up and go right and get onto Main Street, or you could go around under the bridge and then go across the bridge. So I appreciate that's not in your plan, but that may be something that the town would want to think about, is finding a way to connect those pieces to Wolcott Lane. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Ben Serb.
Ben Serb again. I guess I'll get my third question. Originally, Dan, you talked about the entire site and what you were approved for and what you could and couldn't do. This is an entire site that you are technically right now approved for. The original, I'm not going to have you change the slide, but the original A and the original B, you are approved for. They're in phases, 1, 2, and 3. And I believe you meant to say phases 1 and 2 with the 30,000 give or take that you were going to build in those phases when you drew that line over and said that's all I have right now. No, you still have A and B. You haven't gone that route to build those. So to bring this back to the beginning, this was a big change for our town, to bring this many residential units on this site, the trade-off was to get a certain amount of commercial that was gonna benefit our community as a whole. It was never intended to get lopsided. I believe in one of the previous meetings, Dan, you said something to the effect that it needs to be about a 50-50 ratio, and we can go back and review that if you don't believe
Yeah,
it.
no, I would need you to do that because I never said that.
And that's fine. Here we are today. So what do we have? We have buildings E and F going up. He's approved for them. Could there be changes? Sure. Should there be changes? Potentially. If there is a rooftop restaurant that's viable, put it on F. A needs to stay as a commercial building, period. I agree, B does look better on the corner. The problem I see is the second floor offices. Unless you know more about commercial real estate, I think you're gonna struggle with the second floor offices. The B, the configuration on the corner, I think we all agree is better looking. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I'm gonna encourage the Board of Selectmen to give you, a fair tax abatement on the commercial component in this. I think we as a community, we need to work together. So I don't believe we need the second floor on B, and that would be, what, another 16,000 square feet? Let's take that, let's throw that back in A. If you think the restaurant's that viable, throw it on F. There's other options here. We just have too much out there right now. We have no idea what's gonna happen with the 240 units, a multitude of things, including back to the students. You mentioned 18 on the original 240, and you said up to 24 with the additional A. That's not based on any study out of the town of Portland apartments. That's based on what town did you mention?
Brookfield.
Brookfield. Personally, I'd like to know, what did the Portland apartments bring? I think that's more important. And here's where I hate, everything you've shown us to date just keeps changing. And I get it. Certain changes I can get behind. If we have to reduce the commercial in order, going from 113 or 117 down to 83, fine. Maybe that's what we need to do as a community. Maybe I could get behind it. But increasing the residential is not the right answer. Everything changes. The original renderings you gave us had the brick facades, and you mentioned in the original one that you were going to carry that theme throughout. There was brownstone in the back of the Starbucks building. There was a metal roof on the Starbucks building. There's currently the wrong size sidewalk in the front out of the road. I just don't see you completing what, and you mentioned tonight that you're a stickler to detail or something to that effect, or those are the details I want you to
I'm very careful with my language, Ben.
I know that. I respect that.
Yeah.
30 seconds, Ben?
What's that?
30. You will be able to come up one more time if you want.
Are you saying I'm out of time?
You got 30.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to what I was saying. This is the third restaurant you've proposed. I didn't get the first restaurant in the Sage House. I didn't get the restaurant in the bottom of the 1900 mill in the back. Now we're talking about a rooftop restaurant. To me, it just looks like you're dangling a carrot. You get everybody excited. They're better looking buildings. How about we just do what we started and what we promised this community? And maybe I'll give you B. I'll stand up and advocate for that. I think that's great, and we can all work together. This doesn't need to be any animosity. We need to protect our community. You need to finish the project. There is a medium ground. We need to get there. We're not there with another 108 units.
Okay, Rick Shar?
Well, I actually.
Oh, you want
have a
to?
response.
Okay. Sorry, Rick.
So I understand a reluctance to allow more residential. And if it wasn't an enabling mechanism to make commercial happen, I wouldn't be here talking about it. There's a lot that happened since 2015 in the commercial area.
Please, if you'd like to say something, please sign up.
Sure. So what we're trying to do is provide solutions. Certainly taking away space from the B building or presupposing that the B building could be built without these changes to A is leaving out part of the presentation. This is interwoven, and it's a very complicated puzzle. And the fact of the matter is, it's a process to figure out what works. And so we're sharing our analysis as we go. And ultimately, what the town decides will either have us finish 2/3 of a job in which it'll stabilize and will be sufficient to be done from our perspective, or it will be able to, I think, be finished in all of its glory, and it'll I think be better. But it is ultimately up to the town. So.
Yeah, Rick Shar. Yeah, we should have time for one more.
Rick Shar, 168 Middle Haddam Road, 48 years in Portland, and a former business owner. I'm just curious, you talked about the price of the apartments. What are their sizes? And so that's really my question.
Sure.
My only comment, then I just have a comment that I don't know what the right number of apartments are to have, but I do know, because I've been involved with commercial real estate, that to get businesses to come to a town, there's certain population thresholds. And I don't think we even have 10,000 people in Portland. So we're fighting an uphill battle trying to get businesses. And I'm on the fence on this because I enjoy Portland being a small community and kind of tight-knit. But we have to be realistic, and whether it's 240 or 350, but at some point we need to have more critical mass if we really want, basically more people, if we want to have a lot more businesses in town. We're caught between the Bend and the Connecticut River. We have a river on two sides. We have a bigger city in Middletown and a rather long ride up to Glastonbury. But we can't draw people out of the river. And so just getting people to come to town, businesses, it's difficult. I guess the biggest plus we have is the bridge and kind of play off the traffic count with that. But when you have under 10,000 people in a town, you generally don't get the national players. I've found this in my experience in Portland and Colchester and East Lyme and other towns where I've had businesses. So that's just my comment. You can,
sure.
I'll stop.
No, thank you, Rick. To answer your question on sizes for the different price points I gave you, just over 500 square feet on a studio, they range from 511 to 600. And then on one bedrooms around 670, and the range goes up to, say, 800 and something. And then the two bedrooms start at around 1,100 square feet.
Do we have prices on the commercial? We've given prices on the residential, but
There are ranges based on what part of the site you're in, and so CBRE would be able to price with a prospect, but it does depend on where you are on the site. Next to Starbucks is a premium space over, say, in the F building, for example.
are they in line with other businesses in town, say Main Street or some of the?
No, I would say that
properties on 66?
our asking prices are significantly over because we're building something new. And if we had, I can't disclose what the Starbucks is paying, but if you said, get me Starbucks and make them pay X dollars, you would have been laughed at for what is actually happening. So you have to craft an entire solution and be able to credibly execute on it in a knowable time frame. And so this idea of, well, build 2/3 of it because that's all we know we can do, I think is a destructive view. And so if we can do the whole thing, I think we should try, because I think that has the best overall effect for the rest of the town.
Okay, before, I only have one other gentleman on the sheet for questions. Just to all the people online, I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to have time to get to any of your questions. I believe Dylan is going to be providing my phone number and email address for you all, and you can forward questions to me, and I can try to field them or forward them on to Dan to try to get you some answers. So I do apologize, but we will have to end at 9. So I think we only have time for this one additional question asker. So With that, Ben, sir, for one last go.
Hi, Dan.
Hello, Ben.
So basically, one of the things you're not quite being clear on, you're not going to build 2/3, because if you say that, you're in default of your special permit over on the zoning side. You're going to build the entire site.
You build what you can finance, Ben.
What's that?
You build what you can finance.
Well, you also build what you took on for the animal. I didn't take the animal on, you did. And you knew the market in Portland at the time, and yes, it's changed a little, I respect that. But at the end of the day, you took on this animal, and you are going to build what is part of your special permit, unless you're putting on the record tonight in testimony that you're only going to build 2/3, then you're in default to your special permit, and we can move forward in that manner. You've already been in default of your tax abatement, we get it. Is this a pattern that we have to look forward to as a town? Look, I want to work with you, Dan. But at the end of the day, start producing. This is your approval. You got 240 apartments. You promised us X. I understand we may need to work together on some of this to make it come to fruition. But at the end of the day, you took this on. You knew what you were getting. This was your special permit. So please correct the record that you will be building the entire project. It won't be a 2/3. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, let me respond. It's as simple as this. There are phases to a job. The fact that it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 is completely immaterial. And how it ties between the Board of Selectmen and the Zoning Commission is something that is often reworked because there's a contemplated approach and it changes. The material change to 3 phases was because of our taking on the Hart Jarvis house. You keep leaving that out of your analysis, and it's a big burden. Now, from the standpoint of completing the job, yeah, you have permission to build some number of units, be they commercial or residential. You go out and you finance that, and you work through all these approval processes as commercial tenants come in and say, well, I need these changes, right? And so from a developer's perspective, the judgment is made about engaging with a town based on what I call, say, the typical citizen, okay? And so the typical citizen in Portland is very reasonable and pleasant and realistic.
Thank you.
No, you're not one of those people. But you're not. I mean, you either are or you're not. And so we made a decision to invest in this town in a very significant way and to apply a lot of creativity to that investment because of a faith in the people in town who I would say Fred Hassan represents in spades. So he's a high-quality guy. You can believe what he says. And from my perspective, yes, I start projects that are ambitious, and it takes years often to finish them. I've never not finished a job. And so the fact of the matter is that if I am coming out to a town and saying, here are the challenges that lead to it stopping, because it's not that you can say we're not building the project. We are building the project in front of God and country. And many millions of dollars are flying around. So from the standpoint of continuing it, it's my job to articulate when the show might stop. That doesn't put me in any bad standing anywhere because we did as much as could be done that the economy would allow. And so if something fundamentally changes after we stop the job because less reasonable people rule the day, then that's the way it goes. And we'll try to finish the job when we can. But I'm giving a path to finishing the job in the world we're in and from a very informed perspective. Because I think I'm probably more knowledgeable about the possibilities of what can be done here, and certainly to throw shade on the residential leasing potential of this product is uninformed.
So just to, well, you mentioned you're spending millions of dollars, and I agree. So as a person driving by and as a large taxpayer in town, what I see is you are throwing a lot of money around, millions. And so far, it seems to be benefiting you. And I'm referring to the overwhelming majority of the residential is being produced at this point. Is that a fair statement? You've got building E well underway, foundation in for F. Those are almost all residential. Then you have an amenity building G that's going to help buildings E and F. That's all on you still. You did take on H a little more restoration. You're not moving it now. I know you say you weren't going to pay, but if you read the approvals, you were going to pay. And you were going to pay for the foundation, but we could go all night on that. But at the end of the day, you're doing all the things that benefit you, and fine. But here I am representing Portland. Where's our commercial? You took this animal on. I don't want this to fail. I think you can pull it off.
I wouldn't have started the job if you were representing Portland, Ben. So
Well,
the point is that,
Then
let me
I
be
wish
very
I was
clear.
representing Portland at the time.
Well, let me
Because
be
if
very.
you can't come through, hang on, let me finish. If you can't-
Finish.
Okay,
Sorry.
if you can't come through with a project that you anticipated, we knew the challenges when you came in and changed our zoning regs to accommodate all this to work for your project. If you didn't foresee all the things that could happen on a site of this size, well, shame on you. At the end of the day, I thought you were a good developer. I thought you could pull this off. Well, obviously, you're now stating you're not the guy. Is that what I'm hearing? You can't pull it off?
Let me know when you're finished and I'll answer.
I'll take a break because I want to, go, yeah. You can't.
Okay, so the response to this is that when you posit all these partial pieces and you make it sound like $1 has come in from this job, it's all out. The infrastructure, right, and taking on the historic homes is an extraordinary thing on this project, and therefore creativity needs to be deployed to actually build it. Now, from the standpoint of,
I agree with that, by the way.
thank you. And so from the standpoint of what is done next and the speed at which the job can be finished, that's what we're here talking about. And time does matter. Momentum matters as it relates to what other things could happen in this town, as opposed to saying that this job is the only thing that matters for the next 10 years. I think it's smarter to finish the job and give it the maximum, the most sophisticated injection and class and quality that you possibly can, and then see what happens in the rest of the town to the good. Obviously, I'm sitting here believing that our proposal will be very positively impactful.
So
So
think-
Ben, I don't want to interrupt you, just maybe a minute, because
Thank you.
your clock's going to roll up, and then Dan will have the time to respond, and then we'll have to end.
I think big picture, look, we need to finish the project. You and I agree on that. It's just how it gets finished. You have to remember, this site is the only site in Portland that could ever have a 60,000, actually 65,000 square foot store. We made a special exemption for just this site in the only approved mixed use, which happens to be yours. So you have a lot of things going for you. At the end of the day, how about the reality is someday A, it will get filled. You're going to be doing all the infrastructure for it. You look like a fairly sharp guy. I don't think you're going to leave that pad site empty forever. So I'm willing to take a chance. Let's work together on building B. I would get rid of the second floor because I think you're going to struggle to fill all these old buildings. But at the end of the day, we could get somewhere without another 108. It's every day, how do we get more apartments on the site? If you want more apartments in the town of Portland, we have plenty of residential land. We have very little, and I think you know this, we have very little viable commercial land. You happen to have a large piece, a beautiful piece, and I want it to be developed appropriately as a taxpayer. That's appropriate. Lopsiding this thing to heavy residential, not appropriate. So I hope we can work together in the future, Dan. Thank you for the presentation. I would probably have 100 more questions, but I know Dan Parade's going to shut me off soon. Thank you.
Okay, so you're welcome, number one. As it relates to the objective, I think it's risky to just see what happens when the broader macro scene is so weak. And what you're doing and what you're proposing, I think, is reckless. Otherwise, I'd say, okay, we'll give it a shot. Now, it may happen if that perspective wins the day, right? And then we wait it out and see what happens. But I think that's a passive approach. I think it's weak, and I think it's not the what gets the best result for the town. And so the town will decide. I won't decide. I'm simply trying to offer a solution, and I stand by it, and that's all I have to say on that.
Okay. We have run out of time. Dan, thank you.
Thank you.
All the people asking questions and the discussion with Dan, thank you. As I said in my opening remarks, this is an issue where reasonable people can have different opinions, and I am respectful of everyone's opinions and appreciate the people who shared them tonight. I don't know if we have anything else on the schedule on this project, Dan?
Just a motion to adjourn.
Okay, just, when is the planning and zoning meeting now? So what is next steps?
So there's
Just to be
a
clear
special,
for the people in the audience.
so there's we have our regular planning and zoning meetings on the first and third Thursday of the month. The next step for Mr. Bertram in this project would be a text modification. And that text modification is going to be heard here at the high school on Wednesday, May 8th at 6 p.m.
Great, thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn? In favor? Okay. We are now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.